The mountain didn't roar. It simply opened its mouth and took her. One moment, Emily Harper was laughing, head thrown back, curls catching the thin alpine sun, as she crested the ridge with her boyfriend's hand in hers. The next, the world folded in half. A blur of silver-brown fury erupted from the trees, silent as a landslide, and the morning exploded into red. Teeth found her shoulder, and a wet crunch that sounded like the forest itself biting down. She had time for half a scream, half a name, Lucas, before the grizzly shook her the way a wolf shakes a rabbit. Once, twice, spine whipping like a rope, blood fanned across the fireweed in perfect scarlet arcs. Her boots left the ground, then came down wrong, at angles no body is meant to hold. She fought. God, she fought. Fingernails raking, bear spray hissing uselessly into that furnace of teeth and hunger, and the final bite closed over the back of her skull, and the mountains took what they always intended to keep. This is the story of the 47 seconds that ended Emily Harper's life, and of the 4 days that led her, laughing and in love, straight into the jaws of something ancient that had never learned the word mercy. Emily Harper was 24, a quiet graphic designer from Portland who spent her weekdays hunched over a laptop in a coffee shop, her weekends chasing the kind of silence you can only find above the tree line. She had curly auburn hair she usually twisted up with a pencil, hazel eyes that crinkled hard when she laughed, and a habit of narrating everything out loud to her boyfriend, Lucas, as if the world needed a play-by-play. That Friday evening, she was buzzing around their tiny apartment like a caffeinated squirrel. She'd taken the whole next week off, her first real vacation in 2 years, and they were finally doing the trip they'd talked about since college. 4 nights. In the Glacier Peak wilderness, no cell service, just the two of them, and a route that looped past Spider Meadow and up to Buck Creek Pass. Bear spray goes in the side pocket, not the brain of the pack, she announced, holding the red canister up like a game show prize. Lucas, folding clothes on the couch, rolled his eyes but smiled. You've told me 17 times, Em. 18 now. Repetition is how memories stick. She tossed a bag of gummy worms into the food bag, then double-knotted the opsuck shut. And we're hanging this properly, okay? No half-assed throws over a branch like last time. I'm not waking up to a black bear using our tortillas as a pillow. She danced around in wool socks, checking things off her handwritten list, taped to the fridge. Stove, fuel, water filter, first aid kit. The tiny ukulele she swore she'd play by the fire, even though she only knew 4 chords. She packed her mother's old enamel mug, the one with the chipped rim, and slipped a Polaroid of the two of them from last summer into the lid of her journal. Lucas watched her with the soft, helpless look he got whenever she was this alive. Emily caught it, stuck out her tongue, then crossed the room to kiss him hard on the mouth. We're gonna see stars you can't even imagine, she whispered against his lips. Real ones, not the LA kind that cost $8 for parking. She didn't know yet that the weather was shifting high up in the Cascades, that a late season front was pushing cold rain into the high basins, that bears were moving lower and faster than usual, looking for calories before winter. She only knew that the apartment smelled like coffee and pine sol and possibility, and that in 12 hours she'd be shouldering her pack under a sky so wide it hurt. Emily zipped the last pocket, slung the pack up to test the weight, and grinned. Let's go get eaten by mosquitoes and pretend we're tough, she said. Lucas laughed and killed the lights. Outside, the city hummed, already forgetting them. They reached the trailhead of Lyman Lake just after noon on Saturday. The sky a hard, washed-out blue that made the peaks look sharper than they had any right to be. The parking lot was nearly empty. only 2 other cars, both dusted with weeks of pollen, and the silence that rolled in when Lucas cut the engine felt almost physical, like stepping into cold water. Emily stepped out first, boots crunching on gravel. The air smelled of sap and snowmelt, and something faintly metallic she couldn't place. She inhaled until her ribs hurt. "Smell that?" she said. "0 humans. We own this place." Lucas hoisted up his pack, gave her a skeptical look. "We own it until the mosquitoes file a complaint." They started up the switchbacks through old-growth cedar so tall the light came down in pale green shafts. Every footfall was muffled, swallowed by decades of needles. Emily kept stopping to touch things. The slick, red peel of madrona bark, a nurse log splitting open with baby huckleberries, a patch of moss so thick it looked like velvet. She took photos with her little point-and-shoot, narrating in a mock David Attenborough whisper. "In the ancient forests of the Cascade Wilderness, we find the rare Pacific Northwest girlfringus, Overexcidius." An hour in, they crossed the first creek, fast, loud, the color of weak tea. The log bridge was slick with spray. Emily went first, arms out like a tightrope walker, then turned to watch Lucas. Halfway across, she froze. "What?" he asked. She didn't answer right away, just stared past him, upslope, where the forest went dark and thick. A patch of salal was flattened in a rough oval. The stems snapped clean, not trampled, snapped, like something heavy laid down and then stood up again. The broken edges still wept clear sap. "Big elk, maybe?" Lucas said, but his voice was too casual. Emily's grin faltered for half a second. Then she shook it off, hopped the last log, and kept walking. Higher up, the cedars gave way to fir, and the trail opened into Spider Meadow. It was obscene how beautiful it was. Knee-high grass rippling like green water, a crooked river glinting silver, and the white wall of Glacier Peak floating above it all. Emily actually squeaked. They dropped packs near a stand of larch and just stood there, turning slow circles trying to take it in. A Clark's nutcracker scolded them from a snag. Somewhere far off, a rockfall clattered down a cliff and echoed like gunfire. That was when Emily noticed the prints. They were in the soft mud beside the river, 5 deep crescents the length of her hand, widely shaped, widely spaced, claws longer than her fingers. Not black bear. Black bears have a tidy, almost cat-like print. These were splayed, brutal, the front pads huge, grisly. She crouched, touched one with 2 fingers, still damp. "Lucas!" He came over, looked, and the color left his face all at once. "Could be old," he said. "The edges haven't started to crumble." They stared at each other. A cloud slid over the sun with the meadow dimmed, the grass suddenly looking less like a postcard and more like tall cover. Emily forced a laugh that didn't quite land. "Well, guess we're not the biggest things out here after all." They set up camp anyway, because backing out now felt like admitting defeat, and because the prints led north, away from Buck Creek Pass, away from their route. They picked a site with good sightlines, cooked dinner 30 yards downwind, hung the food bag high and perfect between 2 trees. Emily triple-checked the knot herself, then clipped the bear spray to her belt loop, even though they were just sitting by the stove. Twilight came fast in the basin. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in 20 minutes. They crawled into the tent early, zipped in tight, headlamps painting red ghosts on the nylon. Outside the meadow settled, the river kept talking to itself. Somewhere much closer than it should have been, a branch cracked. Slow, deliberate, the way something tests its weight. Emily lay rigid, listening, Lucas pretending to be asleep, one hand resting on the bear spray between them. Another sound, a low, almost sub-audible huff, like air pushed through a cavernous nose. Emily's heart hammered so hard she was sure whatever was out there could hear it. She reached for Lucas's hand in the dark. His fingers were ice. They never saw it that night. It circled once, maybe twice, then melted back into the trees. But the meadow smelled different after that, musky, rank, alive. And every time the wind shifted, it carried the same message. You are not alone. You are being weighted. You are small. Tomorrow they would climb toward the pass, higher, rockier, more exposed. The bear, if it was the same one, would follow the easiest calories in a lean year. Emily stared at the tent ceiling until the moon set, whispering the same useless sentence over and over again in her breath, like a prayer she didn't believe in. It's fine. We're fine. We are fine. But the mountains had already decided otherwise. They broke camp at first light, moving fast, trying to outrun the feeling that had settled over them like a damp wool. The plan was to push hard for Buck Creek Pass, 6 miles mostly uphill, then drop the far side into a different drainage where the bear, if it was still tracking them, might lose interest. Emily kept the bear spray in her hand now, not clipped to her belt. Lucas walked second, scanning every shadow. The trail climbed through Evelyn chutes, blooming with fireweed. The morning was crisp, almost cheerful. They talked too loudly, the way people do when they're trying to convince themselves everything's normal. Emily even started humming. At 9:47 a.m., they rounded a switchback into a narrow slot of subalpine fir. The trees crowded close, needles brushing their shoulders. The ground was soft, with duff. No wind, smell-trapped. Emily was 10 feet ahead when the grizzly came out of the trees on the uphill side. It didn't charge, it detonated. One moment, there was only green and quiet. The next, 600 pounds of winter-hungry muscle and yellow teeth exploded downhill in absolute silence, except for the crush of brush. No warning growl, no bluff, just pure commitment. Emily had half a second. She saw the bear's head. Huge, dished face, silver-tipped guard hairs flashing. Saw the small, piggish eyes fixed on her. Then her body did the only thing it still knew how to do. She yanked the safety pin on the bear spray and raised it like a pistol. The cloud of capsaicin caught the bear full in the face at 8 feet. It didn't slow. The bear hit her so hard her boots left the ground. She flew backward into Lucas, both of them crashing into the dirt. The impact drove the air from her lungs in a soundless scream. Then the jaws closed on her. The bear bit down across her right shoulder and chest, teeth punching through the collarbone, through ribs, through everything soft. There was a wet, sickening crunch, like stepping on a crab shell, and Emily made the first real sound, a high, sharp inhale that never quite finished. Lucas was screaming her name, scrambling for the second can of bear spray clipped to his pack, but the bear shook Emily the way a dog shakes a toy. Her head snapped back and forth, auburn curls whipping, blood already fountaining from her scalp, where the bear's lower canines had torn the skin loose. She tried to hit it, fists, elbows, anything, but her right arm was no longer attached in the way arms are supposed to be attached. The bear released her shoulder, only to clamp higher, this time on the side of her neck and jaw. The pressure was monstrous. Emily's eyes went impossibly wide, pupils blown black. A bright red bubble formed at her lips and popped. Lucas got the second can free and emptied it straight into the bear's open mouth. The animal coughed, a horrid, wet bark, and flung Emily sideways into a tree trunk. Her body hit with a thud that knocked her ukulele loose from the pack strap. The little instrument cracked in half like cheap kindling. She was still alive then, on her side, gasping, one hand fluttering toward the ruin of her throat. Blood poured between her fingers in rhythmic pulses, bright, fast, too fast. Her legs kicked weakly, carving red arcs in the dirt. The bear turned to Lucas. He backed up, hands out, voice cracking. Hey! Hey! Get back! It rushed him. He managed one desperate blast of spray before the bear slapped him down the slope like a doll. Lucas tumbled 20 feet through the saddle and came to rest against a log, ribs stove in, barely conscious. Up the trail, Emily tried to crawl. She got maybe 6 inches, fingers clawing at moss, leaving long, bloody commas. A thin, reedy sound came out of her, half sob, half whistle, where the bear's teeth had punctured her trachea. The grizzly left Lucas wheezing and came back to her. It stood over her body, head lowered, huffing, testing the air. Emily's eyes found it. For one clear second, she was still in there, terrified, confused, begging without words. The bear bit down again, this time across the back of her skull. The pressure was slow, deliberate. There was a final, muffled pop, like a green stick breaking under too much weight, and Emily's body went slack all at once. The light behind her eyes simply went out. The bear dragged her off the trail by the shoulder, downhill into the thick trees, her broken pack trailing behind her like a shed skin. Blood painted a dark, shining line through the underbrush. Somewhere in there, her left boot came off and stayed behind, lying on its side like it was still waiting for her to step back into it. Lucas never saw her again. By the time the rescuers reached him 4 hours later, half delirious, shouting her name until his voice gave out, the bear had taken Emily 40 yards into the timber and covered what was left of her with dirt and pine needles, the way grizzlies sometimes do when they plan to come back. They found pieces of her ukulele first, then the boot. Then, farther down, the enamel mug with the chipped rim crushed flat and slick with red. Emily Harper, 24, who had danced around her apartment in wool socks 2 mornings ago, humming about stars you couldn't imagine, was scattered now across a 1/4 acre of forest floor, quiet, small, and already cooling under the indifferent sun. Her flesh rotting, pale as a ghost, a putrid sight to anything with eyes. They never found all of her. Searchers worked the slope for 3 days, following drag marks and the sour stink of blood until the rain came in and turned everything to mud. They recovered her pack, shredded and empty. A single Polaroid, the one from last summer, floated out of her journal, face up in a puddle, Emily laughing on Lucas's shoulders at the edge of the Columbia, both of them sunburned and stupidly happy. Someone put it in an evidence bag without a word. Lucas lived. 2 cracked vertebrae, a punctured lung, and a bite on his thigh that took 43 stitches, but he lived. He sat in the Icicle Creek Ranger Station wrapped in a wool blanket, staring at nothing while a medic tried to clean the blood out from under his nails. Emily's blood. When they told him they were calling off the recovery effort, he only nodded, like he'd known the mountains would keep her the moment the bear took her into the trees. The grizzly was never located. Biologists said it was probably an old boar, pushed out of the glacier's peak by younger males, half-starved after a poor berry year, just doing what lean years demand. Back in Portland, the apartment stayed exactly as they'd left it. The checklist was still taped to the fridge. The bear bag hung from a hook by the door, still perfectly knotted. Her mother came and watered the plants for a while, then stopped. Eventually, the landlord boxed everything up. The chipped enamel mug never turned up. Someone on the search team must have slipped it into a pocket, unable to leave it crushed in the dirt. Years later, hikers on the Buck Creek Trail sometimes find a small, weathered cairn off to the side. 5 flat stones and a broken piece of ukulele wood. No plaque, no name, just a single line scratched into the bark of a nearby fir, with what might have been a key. She wanted stars. The wind moves through the pass the same as it always has, cold and clean, carrying the smell of snow that never quite arrives. And if you stand there long enough at dusk, when the lights go thin and the meadow grass starts to hiss, you can almost hear 4 chords of a song you don't know the words to, played badly, played anyway, drifting down from somewhere high and irretrievable. Then the dark finishes its work, and the mountains keep the rest. That's the story of Emily Harper. It's a horrid one, but these stories are here for perspective, so we can be more bear aware and thankful for what we do have. So if all of you will, like this video, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to this page and become a patron to support the chilling tales. And I'll see you all soon with more of these. Take care for now.